Good evening, ladies.
Kabbalah Haraf, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Okay, we'll get started. Right, so here we have an interesting, an important point which is made. We've already spoke about this several times, but this is like the main source for this halakha. Let me just see if I can find the tour. Right, so the tour says like this: En memanim la'age safa. So what does this mean? We don't appoint somebody to be shliach tzibur who mispronounces the words, doesn't know how to pronounce words properly, how to, the words or letters, whatever it may be. She'en yodeim lechatecha otiot, right? That's exactly the point. So that's the language of the tour. So let's go to Bet Yosef and see what he says about this. It says Bet Yosef, it's a brighter perka koreta Megillah, it's over there Megillah. Chav Dal Amud Bet. It says there, En moridim lifnei teva lo anshe Haifa velo anshe Bet She'an. So it says we can't bring somebody to be a chazan from these two areas, right? Which is Haifa and also Bet She'an. Why? What's the reason why these two areas are problematic? Because they reverse the letters, which are Aleph and Ayin, and they do the opposite of what it's supposed to be. And today, by the way, we have a similar problem also, that a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't know what the difference is between the Aleph and the Ayin. So the Aleph is like an A sound, like an A sound.
Tell us how they do it.
I'm sorry?
Make the sound, because I still don't know. I can't hear the difference.
Surely we will. But just before, I want to give you an introduction here a little bit, right? So the Aleph is the A sound, like A, the A letter A in English. But the Ayin, right, is in the throat. So it's a throaty sound, it's ah. It's in the throat. So that's the whole thing. That's the whole difference. So if you do one like the other, it's not good, no good. You're not doing the right letter, even though they sound similar, to the undiscerning ear, but they are actually different. So if a person who speaks this way, he makes the Aleph into an Ayin and the Ayin into an Aleph, he cannot be Chazan because he doesn't know how to read properly. So the truth is, that this mistake has already become like very very pronounced with the Ashkenazim. They don't know how to do the ayin. They don't do it properly. Some of the Ashkenazim, by the way, as I saw, especially in Eretz Israel, they try to fix this problem. They try to go back to the original ayin. But as a general rule, though, they've lost this tradition, the Ashkenazim. So they really don't do it properly. On the other hand, the Sfaradim, most of the people who know how to read properly, they do the ayin in the proper way.
Okay, can you do it again for me? Can you say like if and with?
So this is exactly what Rashi says, by the way, on the Chumash, right? That the aleph is an A sound, very simple, and the ayin is in the throat. It's in the throat.
Say the word for if.
I'm sorry?
The word for if has an aleph, right?
Right, yeah. So we say im.
Okay, and then say the word for with.
With?
Yeah. With the ayin.
Oh, with. I'm sorry. I thought you said with. Yeah. Yeah, with. So that would be aim.
Okay, so say them together. Again. Say if and then with.
Ayin is im, right? And the ayin with the with, aim.
And it has to be that pronounced?
It should be, do the best you can, that's the thing. So okay. Now, the truth is that because it changes the meaning of the word as well.
Right.
It's a different word. So, but there are certain passages, that we read in the prayers, the priestly blessing and so forth and so on. Over there, what happens is that if you read it the wrong way, you're getting the wrong meaning over there, like Birkat HaKohanim, for instance. So therefore, it's very important that you have to pronounce things properly in order to get the proper meaning. So this is an important thing. The truth is that this is just one example, by the way, of this halakha, which is the ayin issue, which is brought down in the Talmud. But if you look in the books, in the Sephardi books, in the Sidurim, they also give you different also things which have to be also pronounced properly. For instance, there's a difference between the kof and the kaf, right? So what's the difference? The kof, it's deeper in your mouth, inside. Ko, 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 ko. It's like a ko sound. The kaf is more like a, like an American, CK, softer. Right? So the ko is inside a little bit in the mouth. The kaf is like a little on the outside, softer. That's how Rashi defines it also, right? All these kinds of things. Depends on, there's three different places in the mouth where things are pronounced. One is in the throat, one is like deep in your mouth, and one is on the outside towards the lips. So, so the kof is not the same as the kaf. Right? It's deeper. Same thing also applies, the famous, right, the famous letter, which is the tough, right? So here also, right, there's a little bit of a problem there because, with the dagesh, with the dot inside, it's supposed to be a T sound, right? T, like a tough. Without the dagesh, it's supposed to be like a TH sound, like a th, So, the truth is that most people don't do this today properly. It's because when you speak, it's hard to really, make these nuances. It's not so easy to do it. You have to be very careful with it, whatever. So the truth is, most people don't do it today so much, so pronounced. And the Ashkenazim, they turned it into an S sound, which is also wrong. I mean, so they say instead of Braita, they say Braisa. Braisa. And that's the S sound, and that's like a samech, So the tough is not a samech; it's not the same thing. You know what I mean? So that's also a mistake. And also you have other letters, like for instance, I'll give you another example. The tet and the tough, right? So they're both like a T sound, right? But the tet is a little bit deeper in the mouth than the tough, which is more like a T. again, right, a little bit of a nuance of a difference there. So there are differences, between these letters, and therefore, right, what's the rule? The rule is, that this is a halakha, by the way. We're not just talking about recommendations here. It's halakha. So what does that mean? You're not allowed to appoint somebody who doesn't pronounce the Hebrew properly. So then the question is, right, how do we appoint somebody today, in the Ashkenazi world, right? They have a lot of mistakes in the way they pronounce things. So then how do we appoint them? Because the way it is like this, that since everybody speaks like that in their community, then it's okay, because he's not doing something different than anybody else. He's doing the same as everybody else. So therefore, in their community, when everybody does it, it's accepted. It's acceptable. You understand? So you can appoint somebody in their community for their sake, no problem. But you can't appoint somebody like that to be a chazan in a Sephardi community, because that would be not acceptable. You understand what I'm saying? So this is the way it works. Yeah.
I have a question. What about when you have, for instance, Americans, either Ashkenazim or Sephardics, they do have a difficult pronunciating certain words when it comes to certain languages, not just Hebrew.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, there's all kinds of issues there with that. So the truth is, how do we what's the litmus test? The litmus test is like this. If the Chazan does like everybody else in the community, he's the same as all of them, you can appoint him, even though he's not 100%. He's not, 100% accurate. He's not, but neither is anybody else there. So then it's okay. But if most of the community, is like very accurate with these things, you can't appoint somebody who's not, because he's already like, taking them down into the gutter. You know what I mean? If excuse my language, he's bringing them down. So, if you have an American community, which is not very, precise about these things, so they're on the same boat. They're on the same page, so it's okay. But in Israel, I must tell you, over there, oh boy, if you come in there and you don't do the ayin, like it's supposed to be done, they're gonna rebuke you on that. They're gonna say, "Hey, what's with you, buddy? Where'd you come from? Which hole did you crawl out of? You don't know how to read properly. What are you doing with the chazan for us? You know what I mean? So it depends on the community that you're in. That's what I'm trying to say. That's the way it works. But in those days, in the times of the Talmud, it seems like everybody was on the ball. Everybody knew how to read properly. So therefore, these guys, who were come from these towns, they read with a slang. They have a slang reading, kind of stuff. They read with that, improper pronunciation. You have differences between different places. There's the the northeast, type of English pronunciation. And then there's a southern, Levdil, right? All kinds of. So they pronounce things differently. There's also the British. So each one has its own variant of English. So all the more so in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue. Which is much more, important, because it comes from God, this language, it's not something that was created by man. So when it comes to something like that, you have to be very careful. So the rule is, as we said, right, the halakha comes out like that as long as you're, the same as all your community, it's okay, But if, for instance, like here, in the Sephardi communities that we have here in my area, a lot of especially the young kids, they don't do the ayin properly, even though they're Sephardi. They don't know how to do it. They're not used to it. They weren't trained, because they grew up in Ashkenazi yeshivot, or they grew up in America, which people don't make these differentiations. So they lost that tradition, unfortunately. A lot of them don't have it, and I keep telling them sometimes when I hear them, these young kids, I tell them, I said, "Where's your ayin, young man? You're reading the ayin like an aleph. What's happening with you?" So we do the best we can. What can we do, right? Especially in our times, by the way, we're we're in pretty bad shape when it comes to this halakha. We're not doing so well. Okay, so let's go on a little bit further here. Let's see Shulchan Aruch, right? As we see Shulchan Aruch, what it says. Right, so says Shulchan Aruch very simple, right? En mimanin misha koreh le'alfin ayin. We don't appoint somebody to be a chazan who says the aleph like an ayin and the ayin aleph like an aleph. He switches them, right? That's the problem. We don't want that because, as we said, right, the main problem there really is that it comes out to be like distorted meanings sometimes also. But the truth is, according to Kabbalah, there's something even deeper there, that they say that when you don't pronounce the Hebrew properly, your prayers are not accepted or heard, or, they're not really, they don't do the proper tikkun, rectification that they're supposed to do. In terms of creating, the spiritual angels that they're supposed to create. They create angels, these things, when you pray. The words that you say creates angels. So they say that if you don't pronounce properly, so the angel you created is also not going to be so potent as it's supposed to be. Not making the right tikkun. All right, so I think we got the idea. Let's go on. So we're going to Yud Gimel. We'll do the tour first, and then we'll get into the Beit Yosef. So says the tour, but tzarich she'eh lavush u'meutaf k'detnan. This is also, right, you have to be clothed and also covering your head when you pray. K'detnan, as it says in the Mishnah, pochiach en over lifnei teva, right? So here he's talking about the chazan, right? The chazan has to be dressed properly. By the way, his standard of clothing is above the standard of the regular person. The chazan has a higher standard, as we're going to see right now, right? Vezeo mi shelovesh begadim kroim b'ktefav uzro'av megulot, right? So it says, what are we talking about here? This Gemara. It says there that the Mishnah says this, right? That somebody who's not dressed properly. So he explains, what does that mean, he's not dressed properly? He's wearing torn clothing, right? Unfortunately, by the way, today it's in fashion, The more your clothing is torn, the better you look, You know these people, right? I don't have to tell you. They love to wear torn clothing for some reason. Their pants are torn, their shirts are torn. I know they think it's cool, whatever, right? But you can't be a chazan when your clothing is torn like this. It's not respectful. So he's talking about what? He's saying, right, that because their clothing is torn, your shoulders and your arms are exposed, and it's not proper to be a chazan like that. So therefore, if a person goes up like that, we tell him, excuse me, sir, either come down or cover yourself with a talit, right? So this way we shouldn't see your muscles bulging out of your t-shirt, right? Whatever, right? Because you have holes in them. Whatever it is. We don't want to see your muscles. We're not interested. Thank you very much. So that's the story there, right? That's what he's saying over here. Okay, so we're going to see the Beit Yosef here. That's why, by the way, always when I see somebody, unfortunately, this is very common, by the way. I must tell you that I commonly see people go up to be shliach tzibur, and they're coming up with short sleeves, short sleeve shirt. It's very common today, like in the summer or whatever, in the hot weather, they wear short sleeves. And I always tell them, I said, hey, excuse me, sir, hello, put on a talit or let somebody else pray. I always tell them, and this is the halakha, by the way, that I don't want to see your upper arms, right, when you're praying as a chazan. It's not allowed to show them. So your elbows have to be covered when you're chazan. At least that much. Like a woman, when she goes outside, right? Same thing. Her elbows should be covered. Same thing also for the chazan. So
only her elbows. Only her elbows should be covered. Everything else should be exposed.
all right, that sounds interesting. Okay.
Rabbi, I actually wanted to refresh your memory on something. We spoke once about how a person should pray in a temple.
Yes.
And I remember somebody objecting to coming with, street clothing.
Okay.
And you said, well, in biblical times, especially in the heat, do you think that people were wearing suits and ties and suffocating themselves, or people came,
that's really a good question what you're asking. I must tell you, that there's this interesting story about this. So, there was the great rabbi in the Sephardi world, the Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Yosef Chaim, his name was, from Baghdad, from Iraq. He was about 100 years ago, right? Whatever. So, he dressed in, like in Iraq, there's people who dress like modern, like Western suits. But most of the people over there, they use in the traditional garb, robes, turbans, things like this. A lot of people dress like that too. You know what I mean? So you have like both sides. So, the Ben Ish Chai used to wear the original, the old garb, the turban, the long robe, this kind of thing, right? Which is traditional garb. So, one time they asked him about this and he says, what do you want me to tell you? He says, this was the way our forefathers, dressed. He says, Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. They all wore long robes and turbans, So now what do you want me to do? Change and become Mr., modern, Mr. Western, and put on a suit and a tie? This is what he said, So This is not really so much halacha, maybe, but, it shows you, right, that's the way they dressed. In the old days, in the biblical times, they dressed with long robes and turbans. They covered themselves. They were very modest people, very modest.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
they were fully covered. I mean, I'm assuming the elbows were also covered with those robes.
By the way,
Is that
David, I
what
want
you're
to tell you
saying?
something, but when it comes to the Romans, though, right, the Roman culture, which was around 2,000 years ago, right? The Romans did not dress that way. They wore like shorter skirts, I'm talking about the men now, right? Their legs were exposed, their bodies were more exposed. So they're the ones who brought in this Western, dress, not covering your body, exposing your body, your legs, your upper, your bosom, whatever, right? All these kinds of things. This came into, this was Roman culture and Greek culture because they stressed the beauty of the body. They want to show off the beauty of their body. So they wanted to actually show their body. So,
so you're saying,
yeah.
So in essence, you're saying that Fifth Avenue is paying a tribute to the Romans.
Of course, this is a continuation of the Roman Empire. That's what it is.
Yeah.
In a different clothing, right? Different.
Right.
That's what it is. There's no question about that. So all Europe and America, the Western culture is like Roman. It's a Roman culture.
Kabbalah, I'm sorry, but what about, the women still dressed up a little modestly, even though the Greeks and the Romans, were showing a little bit more about like their arms and their legs, no? Or more or less, no? That came afterwards, I guess.
Yeah, the truth is, that Rashi brings down on his Perush on the Chumash, he says that the ladies of Edom, the France, the Europe, they used to wear like, they used to expose their body, like they had like the sides of their blouses were open, and you could see their body, So in other words, it seems like it's been around for a long time, this culture, in Western culture, to expose the body, and the Roman culture was like this, very.
But there was a time here where, girls had to cover their knees in school, and there were some morals. I mean, there was a dress code, and
definitely true. It used to be better, But the truth is that in Europe,
no cigar.
in Europe, things were not so good. But anyway, of course, as time goes on, things get worse and worse. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, we've hit rock bottom, pretty much.
Mm.
It keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Pretty much now, it's like
society decays.
I'm sorry.
Society decays.
Yeah,
Society
morally,
decays,
we're
morally,
decayed. Yes.
Yeah.
There's moral decay. There's no question about that.
A lot of people welcome this, though.
Well, what can I tell you? What can I tell you? I won't say anything about that. So anyway, right? As we said, this is the situation. So says Bet Yosef regarding. And so what I meant, getting back to what I was saying, right? That a person goes up as Chazan, he shouldn't have short sleeves. He's not allowed to have short sleeves. But if he prays in the shul by himself, not Chazan, it's okay. He can go with a t-shirt and pray in with a short sleeve shirt. He can do that. It's okay. I'm not gonna give him the third degree. But if he's Chazan, if he's Shliach Tzibur, he has to be a higher standard there. So, and why is that, by the way? What's the reason? Why? Because of the kavod of the tzibur, the honor of the community, the respect of the community. Since he's the leader of the prayers, he has to respect the community by the way he dresses. Okay, very good. So, says Bet Yosef, let's see Bet Yosef. Gam ze sham, right? Pocheach pores et shema, targem aval eno kore betorah. So it says right in the Gemara there, that a person who has this kind of problem, ripped clothing, his body is showing, so he can do Shema and translate, but he cannot read the Torah, and he shouldn't be the Chazan. And he's not allowed to do the priestly blessing like that. Katuv be'aruch, it says in the Aruch, the pocheach. What is pocheach? This word, right? Ainu shelavush beged karua. He's wearing ripped clothing, as we said, right? That's his body is showing. And look what he says, right? He has no sleeves. Right? He's going in a tank top, excuse my expression, right? He's walking around with a tank top. Ela yadav arumot, right? So you can see his arms, exposed. Looks like he's in the gym, lifting weights, That's what he looks like. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
One more thing. You remember when you guys used to work out at the gym, and on Thursdays, Lucille Roberts had a guest night where you could bring a friend.
Okay.
And you used to bring me. I used to come with a suit and a tie and watch you guys work out.
Okay, sounds good.
You don't remember?
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know what this has to do with the learning, though. I'm not really sure.
No, I'm just making a funny, just rehashing a funny moment. It was ridiculous.
Okay.
But,
sounds good. So let's go on, right? As we says, pocheach vehu misha bigat karua. So he says, what is pocheach? He has ripped clothing, uzrotav megulim, and his arms are exposed. Lo yared lifnei teva. It shouldn't be the chazan. He shouldn't be the shliach tzibur. Right? This is the rule. Okay, very good. Let's go on. That's the Shulchan Aruch. Going to Dalet. So it says, right, Someh yachol lired lifnei teva. Oh, so it says the Tur, right? A blind person can be a chazan. So what does that mean? He knows the prayers by heart, right? So he can do by heart. Obviously, he can't read. So he says there, Mishnah Sham. It's a Mishnah over there. Someh pores al shema u'metargem. Rabbi Yehuda omer, kol shelo ra'a me'orot memav lo yifros al shema. So there's a dispute over there, right? One says that a blind person can do Shema and translate the Torah, and the other one says, Rabbi Yehuda, that if he never saw light in his life, he cannot do this. Upasku poskim, so poskim paskin katanakam, like the first opinion, but Rabbeinu Yerucham, it says Rabbeinu Yerucham says katav she'eno over lifnei teva nir'eh she'aya mefaresh. He says that he cannot be chazan. He explains matnitin de pores al shema dafka. He says the Mishnah is only talking about doing the Shema. Tanan, אבל הרמב"ם, but the Rambam כתב, he writes, פרק שמיני בהלכות תפילה, the 8th parak of laws of תפילה, הסומא פורס על שמה, so he says that the blind person can do the Shema, נעשה שליח ציבור, and he can also be חזן, that's what the Rambam says. נראה שמפרש תהו הדין יורד לפני הטבע. Same thing also applies so ופורס על השמה יצריך עליה להפוקה בדרב יהודה וכן כתב ראש. So the Rambam says, right, that a blind person can be chazan. And that's what it says also in the Rosh. He says, "B'tshuva klal daled," in the tshuva, the someh chayav b'chol mitzvot. So he says a blind person is obligated in all the mitzvot. V'gam hu ne'ena min ha'or. He also gets benefit from the light because other people show him around. Hilchach says, therefore, afilu lo ra'a meorot mi'amav, even if he never saw light in his life, pores al shema, he can still do the shema u'mitpalel and pray. V'ilvad shelo yikra b'torah al peh. But you're not allowed to read the Torah like that, right? When you're blind. Why is that? Because you have to read from the writing. So therefore, even if you know the whole Torah by heart, you still can't do that. Okay, let's see the Shulchan Aruch on that one. Says the Shulchan Aruch, so may you read the blind person can go be chazan uvivad shelo yikra b'Torah, but he shouldn't read the Torah. Mishum, why? Because you cannot read the Torah orally. You know, when you go, it has to be read from a script. So therefore, there's no reason, there's no way to do that. As we already mentioned, right, this one time, that the written Torah should be read from the writing. You know, that's the way it is. So since this is a written Torah, it should be read from a written text, which is the Sefer Torah. Okay, very good. Let's go on. So we're doing now Tet Vav and Tet Zayin, 15 and 16. This is also an interesting halacha. Says the Tur, it's in the last line here. The person who goes to be shliach tzibur, shliach tzibur kavua, he's not a permanent chazan. So what he has to do is refuse a little bit, you know, when they call him up. Like as if, like, you know, he's hesitating. Before he goes to actually do the job. But not too much, you know. So he should refuse a little bit, but not too much. So how should he do it? The first time they ask him, Misarev, he refuses. When they tell him second time, he's like trying to get ready already, you know, it's like preparing himself to go, but he doesn't go yet. Like he wants to go. But when they ask him the third time, Yamod, then he should go up. That's the derech eretz, proper conduct in this mode. That's something else already. Well, actually, it's not something else. Same idea. So it says like this: if the chazan who's praying made a mistake, he didn't pray properly, and they need to replace him, you know, because he's doing a bad job. So in a case like that, אותו שמעמידים תחתיו לא יסרב. You shouldn't refuse at all in a case like that, because this is not time to be shy. You have to go up and do the job. This guy can't do it, so he needs somebody to replace him. So in a situation like that, just go up and and do the job. Don't play games. That's the idea.
Kabbalah Harav, is there another time where we have to apply this proper conduct in any other mitzvot? Like, the first time you're asked, then you kind of refuse. The second time is like, well, you pretend, and then the third time you have to go.
Yeah, well, the truth is, this is something unique. And you know why it's unique? Because generally the Chazal say, when you're doing a mitzvah, you should jump to do the mitzvah, run for it. You should be very eager, just the opposite, right?
But is this in publicly too? Eager in public sometimes?
But here, the difference is like this, that since you're doing it to be the leader of the community, to go up to lead them, it's not proper to jump up to be a leader. You should be a little bit shy about it.
Okay, thank you.
You understand?
Yes.
But when it comes to mitzvah in general, you should jump for the mitzvah, of course. Don't wait, don't hesitate. Okay.
Thank you.
God bless. Okay, let's see the Bet Yosef. So says Bet Yosef, Braita, where's the source for this? It's a Braita Pek En Ma'omnin, Brachot Lamedal Amud Aleph. However, if it says over there in the Gemara, person who goes to be the Shliach Tzibur, tzarich lesarev, he has to refuse the first time. Ve'im eno mesarev, if he doesn't refuse, what's the problem? What's the problem with that? Domeh letavshil she'en bo melach. So it says it's like a cooked dish which is lacking salt, Right? So what does that mean? That he lacks tact, like proper manners. He's a little bit raw. That's the problem. Like a dish which wasn't salted properly. It needs more salt, right? People who know me know that I always want more salt. I won't mention any names. Okay, so that's the way it is. And if he refuses too much, says the Gemara, it's like it's like a dish which was over salted, like too salty, tastes like salt water, right? Whatever, right? So so what is he trying to say there, right? The idea is that when you refuse too much, it's like you're playing hard to get, being like too shy, that's too much already. So the proper thing to do is to refuse a little bit, not too much, and that shows that you have the right manners, right tact.
Kabbalah Harav, is this in which Gemara is this? I'm sorry. Brachot, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So let's see. Let's go on a little bit. On Farish Rabbeinu, so it says the Tur explains this. It says Bet Yosef, it's talking about somebody who's not always the Shliach Tzibur. Because if he was appointed to be Shliach Tzibur, so why should he be shy about it? That's his job. You know what I mean? What's the point of being shy? It's your job. You're doing your job. Kavua, right? If you're a Shliach Tzibur permanently, Deilu Shliach Tzibur Kavua, because if you're permanently Shliach Tzibur, Eno le'amtin, you shouldn't wait at all. What's the reason to wait? Go and do your job. Shamru lo klum, right? They don't have to tell me anything. He just goes and does it. You don't wait for them to ask you, right? You got a job to do. Go do your job. He should go up by himself. The other rabbi says, on the contrary, he shouldn't wait. Be eager to go up and do the job. It's your job. So why make people wait? Don't wait till they beg you, to go up there. It's your job. Do your job. שאמרו לו, שיעבור לפני הטבע, שנראה שאינו סומך על דיבור הציבור, so שמיnuhu, because it seems like, what's the problem with that? When he doesn't go up by himself, it's like, he's like refusing to do his job. He was appointed to do this job, So why are you now, playing hard to get with us? Go and do your job. Right? Okay. Says regarding that which a person has to refuse one time, as we said, but it says, one good point there, that it really depends on also who are we talking about, you know what I mean? Like, who is the one who's asking you to go up, and who is the one who's going up? Depends on that also. In other words, what kind of status do you have? What kind of, what kind of level are you on? Look what he says, right? Then if a big person asks you to go up there, you shouldn't refuse at all. Like, do it right away. Why is that? Because you're not allowed to refuse a big person, like a big rabbi, He tells you to do something, go jump and do it. What are you hesitating for? There's a rule like this, yeah.
So if a big rabbi is asking you and you're not the permanent Hassan, then you don't apply with what we just said, right?
Exactly. But not only that, whatever he tells you to do, you should do right away. Don't hesitate. Doesn't matter what it is.
Okay. Except
because he's Adam Gadol, he's a big person, like you cannot, don't try to, procrastinate and judge him, maybe he made a mistake, just go and do it. You can rely on him.
Okay, thank you.
That's the idea, So we learned that, by the way, from Avraham Avinu, that when he told the angels, when he invited the angels to come and join him, to eat there, so they didn't refuse him. Right away, they accepted. You know why? Because you're not allowed to refuse a big person. They said, Avraham Avinu is a big guy, so we're not allowed to refuse him. So they accepted right away. He told them to eat. They came and ate. That's it. No questions asked. But then we learn from a different story, which is similar to that, which is Lot, when the angels came to visit Lot in Sodom. So he asked them also, he invited them to come and eat, but first they refused. So why is that? Why did they refuse? Because Lot was not a big person, he was an average guy, average Joe. So they weren't so, interested in, doing his will. No big deal. He's just an average Joe. Nothing special, So therefore they weren't so vehement to do his bidding. Only after he begged them, several times, then they came. But he had to beg them to come. Otherwise, that's where we learn this halakha from those stories. So a big person, I would also add to that, by the way, one more thing. That if the person, they're asking to go up there is the most qualified person out of anybody there, there's no reason for him to refuse. Because he's more qualified than anybody else, So he's like a big rabbi, or a big chazan or something, So why should he refuse? He's more qualified than anybody else there. So there's no reason to refuse in a case like that as well, Depends on who you're talking about and what you're talking about. Okay, whatever, right? You get the idea. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch on that. Yeah, we're done with that. Okay. So said Shulchan Aruch, Shliach Tzibur Kavua Yored Lifnei Teva Me'atzmo. Right? He says that, I think there's one before this we have to do. 1 second. I guess not. Okay, whatever. So it says in Shulchan Aruch that a person who's a Shliach Tzibur, he's the Chazan, who's designated there, you should go up right away and pray, like, what are you waiting for? Don't ask people to ask you to go up. That's your job. Go do your job. But right? Don't wait till they tell you. Okay, good. That's 15. Let's go to, that's 14, I'm sorry. Let's go to, 16. We got a 16. That was 15. So it says 16, but somebody who's not, designated to be Chazan. צריך לסרב מעט. He has to refuse a little bit. קודם שירד לפני הטבע, before he goes to pray. ולא יותר מדי, but not too much, right? As we said. אלא פעם ראשונה, so what should he do? How does he do it? פעם ראשונה מסרב. First time he refuses. כשאמרו לו פעם שנייה, when they tell him a second time, מכין עצמו, he like tries to prepare himself, he's putting on his jacket, putting on his hat, right? כמו שרוצה לעמוד, as if he wants to go. He didn't go yet, as if he wants to. בפעם שלישית יעמוד, and the third time you should just stand and go and do it, right? That's it. 3 times is already too much. Don't go further than that. ואם האומר לא, שירד. And if the one who tells him to do it, he's a big person, you should never refuse him, right? Just go do it, whatever, right? Don't ask questions. He's a big man. Okay, beautiful. That's great. Let's go on. We have a little bit more time, Baruch Hashem. Let's go on a little bit. Yud Zayin. I think we're almost finished with this parak, this chapter. So it says in the Torah like this: "Ve'im ta'ah shliach tzibur tzrichim la'amid acher tachtav, oto shema'amidim tachtav lo yisarev." Right? We already read this in the Torah. So again, right? Just to reiterate, what does that mean? That if the shliach tzibur made a mistake, and now they need to bring somebody else there, to correct his mistake, you shouldn't refuse at all. Just go up right away, because you got a job to do, right? You can't. They can't wait for your shy tactics, your bashful tactics. Go up and do the job. They need you there. So let's see the Shulchan Aruch on that. If the shliach tzibur make a mistake, and they have to put somebody else there to replace him, that person should not refuse, right? Go up right away. He's got a job to do. You got to fix it up. This guy's mistake, whatever it is, right? Doesn't know how to do his job. Okay, very good. Let's go to Yud Het. Yeah, these are very interesting halachot that we're going to see right now. They're not really so relevant in our times, but the concept behind them is quite interesting. Let's see, where is the tour here? And so it says the tour like this. If a person says, you know what, I don't want to be the chazan. I'm sorry, I don't want to go up there and pray. So they ask him, why? What's the problem? Why don't you want to go up and pray? He says, you know why? Because I'm wearing colored clothing. I'm not wearing white, right? So he says, we shouldn't even let him go up with white clothing. If he refuses to go up with colored clothing, we shouldn't even let him go up with white clothing. Right? What's the reason for this, by the way? Let's see the Bet Yosef and we'll get into this whole thing. So it says Bet Yosef, Mishnah Perka Koret Megillah. It's over there in the Megillah, Mishnah, right? The Chaf Dal Amud Bet. Haomer Eni Over Lifnei Teva. The person says, I'm not going to go up and pray with colored clothing. He shouldn't even go with white clothing. Same thing if he says Sandal Eni Over. If he says, I don't want to go up with sandals, he shouldn't go up barefoot either. With Gemara, it says the Gemara regarding that. This was the Mishnah we just read, right? So the Gemara says, "My tama chayeshinan shema minut nizrakabo." So says the Gemara, what's the reason why we refuse this guy? That he doesn't want to go up in colored clothing, only white. He wants to be Snow White, right? Mr. Clean, right? So what's the problem with that? So he says, here's the thing, right? We're afraid that this guy's a heretic. He's got heresy on his mind. Why is that? Because there was, like a group of heretics in those days that they only prayed with white clothing, They wouldn't go up with colored clothing. And therefore, we suspect that he's from that cult, that wears only white. So he brings the Rashi here. Pirish Rashi. Rashi says, so he says it's the way of the heretics, to be particular about that. To go up with only white, but not with the colored, because in the Torah it doesn't say anything like that. So where'd you get this from? You got it from the sky? Where'd it come down to you? You learn from here, by the way, also an important thing, don't make up your own rules in Torah. You know what I mean? Just follow whatever it says. Don't make up your own rules, don't make your own chidushim, novel ideas all of a sudden. Yeah, I want to do it this way. Who told you to do these things? Where'd you get this from? Where'd you, whatever it says in the halakha and the Talmud, in the Shulchan Aruch, do it like that. What else do you need? What else do you do? Why do you need to do all kinds of new things? Nobody else does them. There's always some kind of strange thing going on in people's heads, that they always want to do everything different. They want to be different than everybody else, Usually these people have something, a few screws missing, if you know what I mean. A couple of screws are missing there, a couple of loose screws there. So he brings Bet Yosef right after the Rashi. He brings Katab Rambam, says the Rambam, Perek Yud Minchot Tefillah, the Lo Yavor Beotat Tefillah Dafka. So the Rambam says that which we say that we don't allow him to go up to pray, only that prayer, right? But next time we allow him. Just this time, that he said, "Oh, I only go up with white, not with colored." So then we don't allow him that time. But next time it's okay. That's what the Rambam says. Katab Alav Rivash. Says the Rivash regarding that, B'tshuva, Dat Arav she'en chosheshin lo leolam. So he says the Rabbi holds, in other words, the Rambam holds that we don't suspect him forever, just at that time. But dai lachush lo la'shato, only at that time. Be'otot tefillah, only with that prayer. Aval lo she'nachazikeu b'min leolam. It's not that we're not suspect him to be always a heretic, forever, until the end of time. But tefillah acheret, so it says, therefore, in a different prayer, next time, tomorrow, next week, whatever it is, right? Shelo ra'aynuhu shekpid, that we see that he's not really, particular about that. The Katav Rabbeinu Yonatan, says Rabbeinu Yonatan, Shema minut nizakabo, maybe we're concerned that at that moment, maybe, he got like some heretical idea in his head. I only pray in white. Even though he gives a reason for what he says, right? And he also, shows some logic to it. He's doing it for the honor of God. He wants to pray with white clothing, right? Derech anava, with humility. Who ochez lilbosh levanim. כיוון שהציבור מבקשים ממנו כדי שיתפלל, להם אין ראוי להיות סרבן. But he says, the problem is, even if somebody's doing it for the sake of heaven, he wants to pray only with the white, to be Snow White, Mr. Clean, right? The problem is that, on the other hand, he's doing something wrong, which is, he's being like stubborn. The community is asking him to go up, but he refuses, so it's not going to be a stubborn person. So in a case like that, that's why it's not proper to behave that way. Even if you're not a heretic, just the fact that you're a stubborn person and you have your own ideas, and you want to do your own way only, and you don't care about what, the halakha, you don't care about anything else. You don't care about what the community says. That means you're a little bit weird. You're a weirdo, right? A little bit there. Something's wrong there. That's the idea.
Would this follow under the category of being a little bit arrogant because it's not his way, or?
Yeah, well, the truth is that it's very close to, what you're saying is very close also to a different story. That it says in the Kabbalah, in the Arizal, he writes there that a person on Shabbat, he should wear all white. The Arizal.
But that's on Shabbat.
Right, on Shabbat. So the poskim say, that a person who does this in our times, even though the other people don't do that, they don't wear white. So he's considered to be arrogant, just like you said, So it is a form of arrogance, to play these games.
For today's generation, not for the
because nobody does it except him, So most people wear blue and black, and other colors, gray, and this guy has to wear white on Shabbat, to show off. So it's not allowed to do that, he's a hotshot, something is wrong there.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very similar to that, very similar to that idea also, Not allowed to be this way, Just be like everybody else, don't be a show off, don't be a hotshot, don't try to show people that you're better than them, this kind of thing.
Thank you. And what about like jewelry? Like, meaning watch it, men use watches, right? I mean, just.
Yeah, that's okay. No, nothing wrong with jewelry.
Okay, doesn't say anything detail about a Hassan wearing a flashing watch or.
Oh, well, there's no problem with wearing a watch. By the way, there is a discussion about this in the Mishnah Brura. If you wear a watch on your wrist, are you considered to be carrying it, or is it wearing it? So the truth is, the Mishnah Brura was a little bit machmir, about this, but nowadays the custom is not like that. Custom is that we do wear watches, and it's not considered to be carrying it on Shabbat.
Inside of the eruv or outside the eruv?
Even with no eruv.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the custom today is to be lenient about that, regarding watches.
Okay, thank you very much.
There are reasons for that, by the way. We can get into that when we do laws of Shabbat. But we'll talk about it over there. Anyway, right? The rule is today that you're allowed to wear a watch on Shabbat. There's no issue with that. Okay, let's see the Shulchan Aruch. $18. So as we said, right, if he says, if a person says, and he already he says, I won't go to Bishliach Tzibur because I'm wearing colored clothing. I can't go, I'm sorry. Or sandal, or because I'm wearing sandals, right? Not proper to go like that. So that prayer, we don't allow him to go at all. It's the derech of the heretics to be particular about these things. So we're afraid this guy, has heretical thoughts in his head. For that moment anyway, right? Momentary insanity, right? Temporary insanity you got there. Okay, so says the Rama here, so he brings what we saw in the Bet Yosef, right? And even if he gives a good excuse, as if, I have a reason for that, I'm very particular about these things, that doesn't help you, why? Because we don't want you to be stubborn, don't be stubborn. If they ask you to go, do it. And stop giving excuses, oh, I have a good reason, Rabbi, I have this reason, I have that reason. It's my family custom, all kinds of stuff, crazy things like this, all kinds of crazy things. Just be normal, everybody else. Everybody else wears a suit on Shabbat, and you're wearing a white robe, come on, give me a break, what is this, Who do you think you are? What do you think you are? Yeah. Know your place, and know your position. Okay, very good. So, yeah, that's the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, very good. I guess we'll stop there. Thanks for joining us tonight. Chazak Baruch. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Be blessed with wealth, health, happiness, all the good things. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
All the best.